You're listening to the Jiu Jitsu Lou Podcast, and I'm Lou Temlett. I know you're having a good day because either you've been on the mats, considering getting on the mats, or maybe you've now found something to mentally and physically fulfill you. I'm so happy you're here listening or watching this episode. Please don't tap out before the end. When you're a podcast fan, start training Jiu Jitsu. I'd like to welcome Leigh Ibberson to my podcast. Hi Leigh, how are you?
Hi Lou, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Great. Thank you for joining me. And we are fairly well through January, if not at the very, very end of January now. How has 2026 started for you?
To be honest, it's been very positive so far, actually. I've had some great successes already throughout put my way. It's a very positive start to the year. So I'm very excited for what this year has in store for me, or for what I can create this year.
I like that. And this is really about creating our own opportunities. We've met a couple of times over at Shaftesbury Submission Grappling over in Shaftesbury. That is in Wiltshire, isn't it? I'm just sanity checking now.
Yes, we're Dorset, so
that's fine. Good. Only because I grew up in Salisbury, so I kind of know Wiltshire, and anywhere within, I guess, 20 or so miles is still Wiltshire as far as I'm concerned. But anyway. So you're based in Dorset. You have recently been promoted to purple belt, so congratulations. I was very, very pleased to see that.
Thank you.
A long time coming, but you've been running Shaftesbury Submission Grappling for some time, and I'm just so pleased it's doing so well. Talk to us about your academy.
Well, first and foremost, it wasn't ever meant to be an academy, which is the interesting thing. I started Shaftesbury Submission Grappling just over a year ago. I believe it was October 2024. And the reason I started it is because as you visited Shaftesbury, it's a very small little community. And there's not much to do here unless you travel to Salisbury or Warminster or anything.
Yeah.
On a Friday night, most people just go out drinking. And that did include myself, even while I was training. So I thought that it would be a good idea to do a beginner's class because I was a blue belt at the time. But I was heavily, Jiu-Jitsu is part of my life, like a huge part of my life. And I study it outside of like classes. And I just wanted to give something back as well. So I thought it'd be an easy thing or a good thing to do for the town if I could create one night a week beginner class on a Friday to give the people of Jiu-Jitsu, the people of Shaftesbury to do something. And to help myself as well, because I have a desire to help other people. It started as a one night a week, and it's just naturally grown to now 3, sometimes 4 times a week. We have like an optional Thursday 6 a.m. class as well. If enough people are interested, we do it. And as you know, because you've been across, we host a fair few seminars as well. So it's grown. I couldn't be happier. And especially now we've recently affiliated with Odyssey Combat Hub, which is underneath Trevor Chamberlain and Nate Johnston, and it's under the Carlson Gracie banner. So that was a huge step for us.
I want to take you kind of back to starting Shaftesbury Submission Grappling. Anyone that grows up in a small town or a city knows that you either go to university or you're in a job straight from school. There's a lot of kind of community focus, and there is a lot of social life, if you want it to be, in terms of kind of going to the pub with mates or whatever it happens to be. That there's certainly in the Southwest, there's a culture of being sociable, people growing up and staying where they kind of grew up and finding something that takes people out of their ordinary kind of everyday lives is kind of really important now. Certainly for those of us that end up staying in the towns that we were born in, because everything feels really samey. And I think jiu-jitsu is not samey. It's something quite out of the ordinary. Now, before we started recording, the reason why you started training jiu-jitsu, I was really pleased to be able to say, when you're a podcast fan, start training jiu-jitsu. Now, you have to tell us which podcast, apart from obviously Jiu Jitsu Lou Podcast, you were kind of inspired by to take up jiu-jitsu.
I don't think this will become a surprise to anyone who knows me, but it was the Joe Rogan podcast. Joe Rogan talks about jiu-jitsu at almost any opportunity he can. And I've been listening to his podcast for many years, and it was always on the back burner of my mind that one day I'd give it a go. And yeah, I did. And here we are now, 3.5 years later.
I love it. I also listen to Joe Rogan as well as various other podcasts. And, it's just really nice that it's brought into mainstream media, whilst not traditional media. Obviously, podcasts and kind of broadcasting like podcasting is just becoming much more mainstream in terms of journalism and news and just everything else that's going on. And I was chatting with a friend earlier, and we were discussing how people kind of follow businesses or influence, and it's not traditional media, it's not websites, it's not however much I'm a web developer and trying to promote my business, but we're inspired by podcasts, we're inspired by social media, and that's where the whole kind of brand growth and conversation happens now.
Yep.
What did you think and feel about jiu-jitsu before you started, Leigh? Obviously, with Joe Rogan talking about jiu-jitsu and maybe others, did you think it was something that you were always going to get involved with?
Yeah, for some reason, I always thought when I lead a very busy life, even before jiu-jitsu. It's somewhat busier now with all the training and teaching I do, but I always thought it's something that I wanted to try, something I've always done, and something I firmly believe in is challenging myself or looking to better myself in some way. And I've done that because I've had the same job for 27 years, which doesn't necessarily mentally and physically stimulate me. I restore traction steam engines, for anyone that wanted to know, which is quite a unique profession in itself. And I'm very good at my job. Been doing it a long time, but I can kind of do it without really thinking about it. And so I've always searched for my passions outside of my work. And actually doing my work is where I listen to all my podcasts. So I listen to all of them at work. So I'm heavily listened rather than read in lots of different subjects, because I listen to podcasts because I'm trying to educate myself whilst working.
I think those of us that work for businesses or even self-employed, where we're able to absorb content whilst working and being great at the jobs that we are exceptional at, because we've been doing them for more than 20 years. You and I alike, I'm kind of 30 years in web development, kind of brand and marketing, and I give myself the opportunity to learn outside of that and become educated like you do. But before we started recording, you also mentioned all of the other things that you've tried to do or you have done to kind of push the boundaries and learn and develop in lots of different ways. Tell us about those.
Yeah, well, I think I hate to sound like a cliche, but you discover the most important things either in adversity or out of your comfort zone. So I've always looked for those challenges or those opportunities to better myself or challenge myself. So I've done a multitude of sports throughout my life to try and scratch the itch, I guess. I've done lots of rugby, skateboarding, snowboarding, mountaineering, road cycling, mountain biking. I've climbed mountains. I climbed Snowdon with a 50-kilogram sandbag on my back, in barefoot shoes. I always had this thing, if something doesn't scare me,
Yeah.
then it doesn't interest me. It
Ooh.
has to really I'm I'm heavily into understanding and using your emotions as tools.
Yeah.
And fear is one of my favorite emotions when it
Ooh.
comes to actually trying to better yourself.
Yeah.
Um, Fear presents an opportunity to either challenge yourself,
Yeah.
which in turn gives you an opportunity to grow. So,
Yeah.
for example, climbing Snowdon with a 50-kilogram sandbag on my shoulders scared me because I didn't know if I was capable of achieving it.
Okay.
Um, and that's where you can either make a decision. That fear can give you the opportunity to make a decision whether you try it, and you can
Yeah.
fail, which is fine.
Yeah.
At least you know, and you can look at why you failed, or
Yeah.
you just let that fear take over and say no, and you go the other direction. And I don't like taking that option. I like challenging myself. Failure is not something I'm scared of.
Okay.
It's something I welcome.
Okay. This sounds
Sorry.
very textbookly. I'm going to pull apart some of this stuff because I want to know a little bit more. What was it that you most feared about doing the kind of climb?
Just giving up. Just not being physically capable of reaching the summit with that weight on my back.
Yeah.
Um,
But do you think you're determined enough just to push through that anyway and kind of, throw away all those fears?
yes.
I'm just trying to get to that because there's determination there. Yes,
Yep.
there may be fear, but do you really kind of what was your worst fear? I mean, I just want to dig a bit more, not getting to the top, but what did that mean for you?
I think, like I said, it's not the fear of necessarily not being able to do it. It has to scare me in a way where I want to try. I believed wholeheartedly that I could do that challenge. There
Okay.
wasn't there wasn't a part of me that thought that I couldn't. I had that belief and that determination, but there is still that fear because it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
It's the same as I did a charity bike ride to raise money for one of my friend's nieces who had a Wilms tumor. During COVID, we were supposed to do from Bristol to Paris. So we were three
Wow.
friends. We bought brand new bikes and never rode road cycling bikes before. Unfortunately, COVID hit and we couldn't do to Paris. So my friend then moved to Dubai, but I carried on the challenge and decided to do from Wells in Glastonbury, near Glastonbury, to Land's End and back, which was actually a much harder through the gradient challenge than before. And we raised about £2,000 for this for our friend's niece. But that was 3 days, so we did 160 miles a day,
Wow.
and it was that's probably the hardest challenge that I've done.
Yeah.
It was brutal, um, and again, it's just that fear of not being mentally strong enough. I think
Yeah.
it has to be a big enough challenge to invoke my emotions or my fear to take hold, and for me to be able to
Yeah.
override them.
And does that then spark you to do more preparation? What does that fear then enable you to do before the event?
I think it's fuel. Like nobody likes failure, um,
Yeah.
and as much as I say that I welcome it, it is again, failure is an opportunity to learn. But you don't want to fail. You don't set
Yeah.
out to fail. You set out
Yeah.
to achieve the goal that you've intended. So, um, yeah, I don't think there was any point of me that thought that I wouldn't. And if I didn't achieve these things, then I would have gone back and tried again or
Yeah.
prepared differently. It does give you an opportunity. If something scares you, you do train because you do have that fear of failure. So,
Yeah.
it does make you want to train and make sure that you're good enough, especially if you announce something or become
Yeah.
accountable for it. If you say, I'm going to do this and you don't achieve it,
Yeah.
all of our
I,
egos want us to achieve things and, be
absolutely.
not necessarily be the hero, but say if you say you can do something, you want to be able to achieve it.
Yeah. I think you've hit on something really quite poignant in terms of accountability. You know, publicly saying you're going to do something, and then following through with that. The kind of ego then that happens, or you kind of then shy away if you haven't done that thing and you publicly kind of said you were. But equally, if that does happen, then that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
life didn't quite go that way. Now, you mentioned if you didn't achieve those things, that you would do it again, or, you know, prepare. Is there anything, I want you to kind of head towards jiu-jitsu now. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you've done twice because you didn't achieve what you wanted the first time?
Not well. I I I didn't do very well at competing last year,
Yeah,
and so I'm going to do a lot of it this year.
yeah,
So I think, like, to go into jiu-jitsu more, like I wasn't quite as committed last year. I was sorting, like, life gets in the way for everyone. We have
yeah,
other things outside of it that are important, and I wasn't necessarily in the best place myself. So I didn't prepare properly,
yeah,
and I became complacent with being satisfied with a less than my usual standard of effort,
yeah,
because I was, quite successful in the gym where I was training.
yeah,
I didn't. I was a bit complacent with my prep around tournaments, and
yeah,
that is something that I, I that eats at me slightly.
yeah,
But I'm glad I sorted everything that I needed to and got everything achieved.
yeah.
But this year, it's now there's a different Leigh here this year on the competitive scene.
I like that. And you know, we go, all of us, if we compete, we should. If I'm going to go, yes, of course you should compete, at least giving it a go, because
Yeah,
I spoke with one of my old school friends. She's 50 next year in 2027, as am I. Ah, but she was wanting to collect things that 50 things that she could do before she's 50. And I
amazing.
know she's not a jiu-jitsu person. She is in the Salisbury area, so I've kind of directed her and said, you know, start training jiu-jitsu, because for me it's encouraging more people to start training. And then I was like, okay, that's almost not enough, because it's really healthy to start something but then aim towards a goal.
Yeah,
Almost starting jiu-jitsu is a bit of a nebulous thing, because yes, you may well at some point progress through belts, but it's a never ending. So at what point are you going to start measuring your performance?
yeah,
So I also then dropped in about her competing in her first year, because I know when people do compete, there is such that adrenaline dump or rush or whatever it happens to be that we all experience. And healthy or not, yeah, it's healthy, but it's
yeah.
painful, it's fearful, it's overjoy. But what kind of drives you for that competition, and the, you know, all of those competitive events that you take part in? What emotion is coming up for you when you compete, certainly in preparation for this year?
Uh, whew. uh, at the very beginning, so my first competition was actually I did the British Open no-gi in Coventry as a white belt after training for 6 months. Um, just because the academy that I started at was Elite Jiu Jitsu in Bridgewater. Still to this day, I think that's one of the best training places for just pure training. Um, Highly competitive room,
Yeah,
and they were encouraging everyone to compete. And I've always got a desire to test myself, so I did the British. And a funny little caveat about that is I just got into a new relationship at the time, and my new partner had come to the competition, and that gives you a different level of adrenaline and fear when you're fighting in front of like a female as a male, a new
yeah,
female. So yeah, I actually won the British the first comp I did, which was um, at the time I didn't really think it was a big thing. It was kind of surreal, but it was a very cool thing to achieve.
yeah,
In terms of this year, What is it? I mean, I have fear that uh, I'm the fear that's driving me is I want to show how the things I've been working on and how
Yeah.
competitive I can be. And I guess the thing that scares me the most is me realizing I'm not that competitive. I'm 38 years
Ooh.
old, but I'm very like my my ego isn't. I'm not someone that's very ego driven. In most things, other than
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
if you want to be bigger, better, faster, stronger than me, I'll help you get there. That isn't something that I'm fearful of.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu, because you're trying to break limbs or put me in a chokehold, that drive is different for me because it is like hypothetically life or death situation. So it's a
Yeah.
different kind of fear. So
Yeah.
this is the only sport that's ever made me competitive.
Mm. I like that. We will return to the competitive bit in a moment. This episode is sponsored by Fortitude Official. Fortitude Official was established in 2014, supporting and sponsoring some of the best BJJ athletes. What is really important in Jiu-Jitsu is the ability to play your own game. Having kit that reflects your quality and integrity in the sport is of the utmost importance. Athletes and competitors with that true passion for the sport show up fighting through the battles of the game to succeed. Head over to fortitudebjj.co.uk to get your kit today. Also, go and follow at official.fortitude.bjj over on Instagram. Fortitude, play your own game. This is the Jiu Jitsu Lou Podcast with me, Lou Temlett, coming to you from the UK. Keep checking out the clips that drop as soon as I've recorded an episode, usually way before it gets officially released, over on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Today, I'm having a conversation with Leigh Ibberson. So, Leigh, let's talk about competitive spirit, because I have just started to discover with some values work that, like you, my competitive spirit can and will often, not always, I'm working on it for 2026, show itself. And it's really quite nice. Kind of as masters athletes, because we are over 31, being in a situation where we can be, dare I say it, safely competitive is quite a unique situation for anyone to be in. And if you haven't started training jiu-jitsu and you want to safely go into a competitive environment, jiu-jitsu competition is the place to be. So let's talk about your competitive kind of spirit and what you're working on at the moment to be more competitive in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, well, as I said previously, this is the only sport that makes me competitive about winning.
Yeah.
And because the stakes are so different. And actually, something I'm working on this year, as I'm an ultra athlete, so that means I'm over 100 kilos, which means there's no weight limit. Okay, so it goes from 100. Usually, there might be some brackets of under 110.
Yeah.
When you go to gyms, there's not that many of us at this weight, and in competition, to be fair.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you'll realize or get faulted for sometimes is people don't like the big guy because they think they can't be technical, etc., or they think you're using just strength.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've had to dial back that and learn a very different game. Unfortunately, that in competition did not actually go well for me because I had lost that sort of competitiveness.
Yeah.
No one wants to be really aggressive, but in a jiu-jitsu tournament, it is very different than being in the gym, and you do need to be a bit more assertive with your grip and your strength and because
Yeah.
there is adrenaline, and if you go into it not ready for that, it doesn't usually end well.
Yeah.
So something I'm working on hugely is actually bringing back that competitiveness and that desire to win, because I lost it for a bit, and I was sort of encouraged to not use my strength or sort of faulted for using it. And
Yeah.
I think everyone should use all their attributes to their benefit within jiu-jitsu. That's why we love it, because it's
Yeah.
so
Unique.
versatile for everyone. Yeah. Any
It's so
body type,
unique.
any body shape, and you have to have a different game for every different body type.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how do you think, or describe how your game has changed or is changing that you've noticed, kind of, in your gameplay?
Yeah. I think I've spent a lot of time recently playing from the bottom, recently, which,
Yeah,
as a bigger guy, that's not necessarily the go-to, but I don't want it to be a weakness.
yeah,
In a ultra competition, usually the person that gets on top is the person that sort of can dominate the match and dominate
yeah,
where it's from. And so I've wanted to change and build a defensive to an offensive tacking cycle, so that
yeah,
it's really exhausting being on the
yeah,
bottom. And my game on top is exactly that. I try and wear my opponent down
yeah,
hugely. I make them melt. Like, I watch their soul leave. So, because I find that in jiu-jitsu, if you're a very similar skill level, very similar strength level, the
yeah,
person that's usually going to win is the person that manages to make the other person work more. Because when you're tired, you make, like, worse decisions, and
yeah,
jiu-jitsu is about making good decisions, And the
yeah,
thing is, fatigue makes cowards of us all.
yeah.
So
It
yeah,
does. I've been playing my top game a lot recently, but I appreciate your position from, developing your bottom game, which I think is really good. Now, I just want to, one of the things that occurred to me is you're running classes on a Friday night. And when you're kind of tired and exhausted, which some people are, by the time Friday gets around, training is the last thing they want to do. But how do your students show up at your classes? How can we prepare ourselves more for Friday night classes? Because I think it's such a great time to train and optimize all of that stuff that's happened during the week. But how can we best show up on a Friday night for jiu-jitsu training, Leigh?
I think one of the things that we encourage, or I encourage, is we actually make Friday quite sociable. So, as you know, you've come to the club. There's a pub
Yeah,
just over the road, and we quite often on a Friday night will go and socialize at the pub after. Now, I'm not saying that's the best way to prepare for a Friday night, but for my students, I try and make that night the night that they look forward to. So I make that training session usually one of the hardest,
yeah,
through positionals, and, like, that's the night we all do our rounds. So
yeah,
we prepare in the week for a very solid session on a Friday, and then we try and socialize and get together and
yeah,
discuss our week. And you've been to the club. We have a very
yeah,
sort of tight knit. It's a very small town. It's a very clicky little
yeah.
town. So we do have, like, this little community. It's really lovely what we.
Yeah. I agree, it is really lovely. And one of the unique things that you are so ideally positioned. Now, when you go to Shaftesbury Submission Grappling, it's in a dance studio, isn't it, Lee? And in the
Yes.
art centre. So
Yeah.
when I first visited, um, if any of you don't know art centres that are kind of built whenever they were built, it's a bit of a rabbit warren. And I spent
Yes.
a long time going up and down different stairs, not knowing where the heck you were. And I couldn't hear
Yeah.
you either. There was
No.
no sign. It's kind of tucked out the back or at the
Yeah.
front of the building. Um,
Yeah.
but what's really nice is that there's that kind of element of discreet kind of privacy. It's out the way, but it's in a beautiful dance studio.
Yes.
Now you will know because my history is dancing. But actually, when you're training jujitsu, what's really good is that you have the reflection. You can see what's happening. And I'm not sure how many of your students actually utilize the mirrors, but it's really handy. And you go, yeah, that's not quite in the
Yeah.
right place. You
Yeah.
can kind of reflect on that. And I'm not sure whether that's a conscious thing for you in your training and how you kind of operate, but what a fantastic space.
It really helps with teaching, actually, as well. Just because it means everyone can sit in a circle, and if I'm behind, I can look into the mirror and show the technique and make sure the
Yeah.
positionings are right, and etc. So it wasn't a conscious decision. It was like, but it has become a benefit to the club. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the other things I did notice, how sociable, the fact that everybody knew each other. Often when you go into a jiu-jitsu school, whether you're new or you've been there for a while, you might not know everybody's names. But one of the joys about your place, Leigh, is that everybody does know each other, and it's a really welcoming space, whoever you are, which I think is fantastic too.
Yeah, I think we've consciously tried to do that, and we've done things as a team.
Yeah,
Other than just compete, we have a few have competed, but not everyone that comes to my class or want to compete.
yeah,
It's a new challenge I have. My oldest members are 55 and 60, and they started jiu-jitsu because I started Shaftesbury Submission Grappling, which is a huge, like,
yeah,
admirable thing to do at that age. So we've done Penny Fan, so a small mountain in Wales, like as a team, just as a trip to try and like bring that community feel. I think that's one of the things that like jiu-jitsu is so incredible for.
yeah,
One of the things I love is it almost breaks the ice of any conversation. If you walk into a jiu-jitsu academy and you both know you do jiu-jitsu, you've already got something in common.
yeah.
So those barriers are slightly down. There's automatically a slight bit of respect there. So it's community, and being able to travel around is one of the things I love about jiu-jitsu.
Good. Right. Now, thank you for sharing that. And you're right, it's giving us a platform and a conversation starter without having any of those kind of icky barriers. It's like we're all talking about jiu-jitsu, we're all talking about, whichever positions or whatever. But you have some very exciting things coming up for 2026. So tell us about that.
So I'm competing quite a lot this year. My goal is to compete at least sort of once or twice a month where possible, to work on the stuff that I said previously. So I'm on Coastal Combat League on the 7th of February, against one of my old favorite teammates from Elite, which is like slightly bittersweet because he was my favorite training partner. We'd worked really well together, and now we're opponents, but it's something we've got to do, and I'm actually looking forward to it.
Good.
In terms of anything else, I'm traveling to Europe to do ADCC Denmark in March, and I've just been confirmed on I believe one of the biggest shows in the UK, which is Grapplefest. So I'm on the prelims for that, which for me is a huge win.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to compete on Grapplefest and Polaris.
Yep.
And as you said, like as a masters athlete, it's harder to have these opportunities. So I'm very fortunate that I've been able to get myself onto that card. So I'm very excited for that. And I'm very lucky. I've just been bought a week camp with Gordon Ryan in Budapest.
Wow.
Yes, that's slightly surreal. I don't deserve my partner. She bought it as a present. So
Oh,
yeah,
amazing. I'm sure we're all going to go and find out more about that,
yeah,
because opportunity to train with exceptional athletes, competitors, likes of Gordon Ryan. Oh my goodness.
yeah.
Okay, that's a big one. That's a big one.
No.
Let's talk a bit about Coastal Combat,
Yeah,
because the venue is quite unique. I've
yes,
been seeing the very fancy socials being posted. It makes me feel like we're going to be in the mid of summer. And of course, we're not, because it's going to be the first week or so in February. But it feels quite fantastic.
yes. Well, the guys, I don't know if you know, but Coastal Combat League started as subs on the stand. So they ran competitions down on Weymouth Beach,
Oh,
and they did a few shows on the beach, and they did some country fairs and stuff. And yeah, they're building quite a nice like collection of shows, and interesting venues, because it's when you compete in jiu-jitsu, there's like leisure centers, and they're not very fantastic unless you do like maybe some of the bigger invitationals.
yeah.
And the guys have thought outside of the box. Dorchester Prison, and it seems really fitting. They're going to use the prison cells as like stalls and stuff. And
Oh, wow.
there's, yeah, my partner who runs Fortitude, they've got a stall there. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. They're a great bunch of guys, and it's not just they try and make it, again, they're bringing all the martial arts that they can. So they're bringing boxing and combat jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
MMA, and they make it into a festival, a mini festival. So there's like a DJ, you can stay after and have drinks and enjoy the event. And I think it's fantastic what they're doing, and I support them as much as I can.
Yeah, good. And of course, it's in Dorchester,
Yes.
which will be amazing. And Dorchester is in Dorset, if I've got my
Yes,
geography
yes, yes,
right.
yes, yes, yeah,
Okay, same county. That's fine.
yeah, yeah.
And I grew up in the south, so I should know these things. Anyway,
Mm.
Leigh, I wish you all the luck for 2026 and beyond
Thank you.
as a purple belt in the ultra division. I think it's amazing what you're doing with Shaftesbury Submission Grappling and building up a community that didn't previously have jiu-jitsu. And I think anyone that has and lives within a kind of community should absolutely take up the opportunity to build up something quite special with jiu-jitsu. How can people follow your journey and the success that you're going to bring to the show in 2026, Leigh?
So my Instagram is Leigh_Ibberson, and my small little academy is Shaftesbury Sub Grappling.
Amazing. Now, we didn't mention actually that being a small grappling academy, you have some pretty big names. Now, talk to us about who you've had on for 2025, because I was able to attend a number of seminars, obviously on this Friday night, so it's a great opportunity. But you've had some cracking names, Leigh.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things to mention is, like I said, I started this as a blue belt. So obviously, as much as I study, my knowledge is going to be somewhat limited. So I want to give my students the best opportunity to learn from people that are far above me. And I think that's because that's what I want to do. So I want to bring that for my students as well. So I think we organized 5 seminars last year. And yeah, we were very fortunate. I could have the likes of Mark Hibbs, who is a longtime friend. And I've known him since he was 18 from working security and stuff. And we've managed to get Chris Leindeckers and Chanel O'Brien, which I know you were personally extremely excited about.
I was.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that the students get the opportunity, and selfishly myself, to bring these people in. And I think I'd like to help the athletes too. You know, jiu-jitsu is quite a hard environment to make a good living, and so I offer them quite good money to do it. I don't make money on seminars; they've all cost me money so far, because I pay for a photographer as well, and I give everyone like photos, and so they can remember it, and you know, it's good for the guys that are teaching as well. Because then they have content to put out, and it just spreads the word. It's advertising for my gym, it's advertising for their teaching, and it's just great for me and the students to learn from people that are far superior.
One of the things that really brings me a lot of joy is that all of us will look back in a number of years and go, if we didn't know who these people were that were coming to teach seminars, we will in a number of years, and then we'll realize just what a privilege at such a kind of white blue belt level we've been exposed to high level grapplers. I'm just waiting for you to invite Gordon Ryan back to Shaftesbury Submission Grappling, to be honest, Leigh.
Yeah, well, wouldn't that be something?
We'll leave it there. We'll put a little call out, shall we?
Yeah, let's get him on.
Leigh, it's been fantastic chatting with you. Please do come back on, and I wish you all the success, because what you're doing from a grassroots level and promoting jiu-jitsu to the community that you exist in, live and work in, I think is just amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. Really enjoyed it.
You're welcome. If you've got this far, thank you so much. Let me know who you'd like to see on the show next. And I really do hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to be checking out to see whether Gordon Ryan appears at Shaftesbury Submission Grappling. Anyway, you heard it here first. Thank you for telling your friends about this show. And as soon as this episode ends, I'd really appreciate you dropping the show a rating and a review. Thanks again for listening. Catch you on the next episode of the Jiu Jitsu Lou Podcast.